Let's continue this conversation with extortion, on the extortion challenge. I'm joined by Dr. Foster Manganyi from the Criminal Justice and Forensic Investigation Department at the University of Limpopo. A very good afternoon to you, Dr. Manganyi. Thanks very much for your time. Your biggest takeaways from, let's start with the statement that was delivered by the minister outlining plans to deal with extortion.
Thank you very much for hosting me. I'd like to make some comments on the statement that it was delivered by our Honorable Senzomtun. Even though I just joined along the way, I was on another meeting. However, I just grabbed some other stuff that while he was indicating the measures as to how is he going to address issues revolving around the extortion and those other crimes, because when we look at extortion, it does not necessarily, or we shouldn't just look at it as he was alluding that there are other crimes that it requires the attention. Therefore, in my views here, when it comes to addressing crimes of that particular nature, because they seem to be committed as a syndicate, or it involves a multiple of people, considering the incident that it had happened wherein our police officers, they had cornered the suspects, and then they shot at them while they were exchanging fires, wherein we got the reports from the media that some of the people who eventually passed on. So the crimes of this nature, as he alluded, it requires an approach wherein, or in integrated efforts and the use of intelligence from the communities, because all these crimes, they start from the ground, and we see the end result wherein these criminals, they become successful, or we see the execution at the end. However, if cases of this nature can be followed very well, police officers might find the leads even before the execution.
Of course, I mean, the minister went into Parliament today to make that statement with the background that we all have. I mean, we've been reporting on this matter over the past few days, weeks, and months, and the things he said, even the instances that he highlighted, were the instances we have all been talking about in the last while. But I want to bring you to the approach he says is a whole government approach, where they are going next. They've begun, you may have seen this, in the Western Cape last week, where there were cooperation agreements being signed between the provincial government, the national government, community policing forums, and the like. And he says this is going to continue, and that model, the minister says, is going to be replicated across the metros in the entire country. He then also said that he has scheduled meetings in Gauteng this coming Thursday, and then on the 19th and 20th of this month, they will be going to KZN as they begin to roll out this program. This coming Friday, he says, they are meeting with the justice and policing cluster to tighten up their activities to ensure that there are better synergies. Does that to you sound like a plan?
Yes, it sounds as a great plan. However, it might be a plan at hand with no execution. We had a lot of talks. We had a lot of thinking in mind, trying to plan. However, what it is lacking here, it is the execution from the ground forces. They might plan this from the national level, provincial level, but then we are failing to address the issue of crime from the ground level, from the rural communities, from the rural setting communities, but failing to address these issues. When we look at crimes of this nature, it does not necessarily mean that it is taking place or it is happening in urban or semi-urban areas. It starts from the ground. It starts from this rural setting, and it goes and goes because these people, you might find that they are executing it from the rural point of setting or the rural point, and then they goes and advance to people, those whom they are targeting or those whom they are known to be having money. And that's where in as we were talking about the cases of Western Cape, uh, as those people that are being cornered or they were cornered, and they were there as a group. Therefore, where are their exact locations? You might find that these people they are coming from, they were not exactly, or they are not originating from that exact point wherein the exchange of fire happened. However, they might be traveling from other areas of the country, not necessarily meaning that those criminals they were originating or they always originate from that particular province. And the other thing, when it comes to that, as much as they are advocating these strategies, they should also consider the intersectoral operations with the neighboring countries, because we might find that they are colluding with people from our neighboring countries, and not neglecting the point that we also having certain officers within the service itself. While I was listening to his last statement, while he was about to conclude, he did mention that they are there, however, they are not that much. And that statement, it is just it came as a generalized statement without the actual facts. However, we do have these officers. That is the reason why, at a given point, we might find that in instances where you have haste, we have extortion, or some other serious offenses, we might find that there were officers from, it's either from the metros or from the SAPS during that organized activity.
If I understood him, correctly, the events I mentioned earlier, it's a build-up to the government's adoption of the national policing policy, and the minister did say that, and went further to say that they are aiming for the end of October for the adoption, as a deadline for the adoption of the national policing policy. Now, that national policing policy, you will recall, which was adopted, which is has been in the making for quite a while, and it seeks to address some of the very same issues you're talking about. In other words, working with communities, but also dealing with a whole lot of other things like your corruption, low morale, dealing with negligence, ill discipline, but also capacitating the police themselves. Does that not then speak to something that is at the very least in the making, even though perhaps it may not have as yet, we may not have seen any concrete results so far?
Yes, you are precisely correct. Some of the mentioned aspects, yes, they do have a contribution of some kind, like especially when we look at morale, low morale. It is one of the causes of police officers being involved in not necessarily corruption, but they do sometimes get involved in corruption, and of which I believe that the psychological section it should take care of officers of that particular nature. And most importantly, if they can address that in a well-professional manner, trying to professionalize, they keep more training to these officers, or more focused training to these officers in order to enhance and promote the vision of professionalizing the service itself, that it might as well be a resolution to much major problems that we are seeing today, that we are experiencing, and having officers being involved in crimes of this nature.
Dr. Manganyi, that's why we're going to leave it for this afternoon. Thank you very much for your time, Dr. Manganyi, looking, of course, or speaking on the back of the minister's statement that he gave before Parliament today, which was, of course, debated by close to 20 MPs. The minister, in the end, making a declaration that he reckons the MPs in Parliament today were speaking in one voice. They're all rejecting crime and criminals. The minister also insisting that there are plans in place, and very soon those plans, he said, will bear fruit. Loopholes have been identified, but they will be tightening those. And he did, of course, as I said earlier, lay out a bit of a program for the next few weeks in terms of which they will be dealing with this matter.